Okay, I'd like to call to order the second hearing we have this evening for the proposed 2025 preliminary budget ordinance. This is just a hearing. It is not the adoption of an ordinance. That will happen at a later date. I do have the proof of advertisement, which I will hand over to the court reporter. Amanda, I think I'm going to hand the program over to you and Bill.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there, if no one has an objection.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, take your time, Lauren. Sorry.
I'll speak slow, I promise.
We'll try to speak slow. I know
I'll speak
we
slow, I promise.
tend to be speedy talkers. So what we have, I'll point out, following the charter requirements, we released a public presentation. It's available in the back of the room. That was on November the 1st. Regarding the preliminary proposed budget ordinance. Additionally, in the back of the room, I'll point out that we have this presentation. We will be posting the presentation online, and this hearing is live and will be available online as well on our YouTube channel. So I'll start with that, and we'll move forward, and Bill and I will go sort of back and forth here a little bit. I'll start off by talking about the budget process, and this budget ordinance is the most critical policy document adopted by council each year. I always like to point that out. Additionally, as you see in the slide, this is an evolving moment. So while we're here with the proposed budget, this is something we're assessing and reviewing all the time between staff, stakeholders. We're looking at our budget every single month when council approves bills, and we're looking at everything to make sure we're in line with where we need to be. So I just want to point out that this is a evolving moment. It's not just something that happens once or twice a year. This is our budget adoption timeline. As I said, November 1st, by charter, we released the preliminary budget ordinance. Today is the 19th, which is our budget ordinance hearing. I will also point out that throughout the year, we have at various council meetings had budget discussions. And we did a separate workshop looking for ideas. Additionally, November 20th, after this meeting through December 1st, the meeting, we will turn around any changes that are necessary as part of the hearing, any personnel updates, insurance renewals that come in, the county tax assessment, which actually just walked in the door, and everything will be updated in accordance with those changes. And then December 3rd is the public council meeting where we intend to adopt a proposed budget for 2025. With that, we'll talk about the preliminary budget. I'll turn it over to Bill in a second, but I do want to point out a couple things. In the actual presentation that was released to the public, I note in there some township quick facts. I like to point out these quick facts for several reasons. One, I want to point out our municipality and our size. So we're the second largest landmass in the county. Our taxes, we are the third lowest tax rate in the county. Our population is over 18,000 residents. Additionally, our residents, their local government taxes average about $229 a year per household. We have a AA1 bond rating, which is very high, very good indicator of the health of our economy and the township in general. And we have 37 full and part-time employees. We maintain 55 miles of roadway and 70 miles of sewer lines. I like to point that out because we run extremely efficiently. We don't have a ton of staff for the size of municipality we have. And I think that through council's leadership, we have kept things running from a budget perspective pretty smoothly as long as our staff who's here. I want to point out also that we are 83% residentially zoned, which I will point out because that is extremely important in municipalities. For those of us that all experienced COVID, those municipalities that were heavy residentially zoned and didn't have the commercial piece to it, it's very difficult from a taxation standpoint. They experience higher taxation than when you have the mix where the commercial helps to float what happens. So for every $2 that commercial puts in, about $1 is residential. So I do like to point that out, and we are 83% residentially zoned. I think a lot of folks are very familiar with the 2021 and Conchester corridors, and to recognize that we are a large landmass and we are 83% residentially zoned, which I think provides us a decent mix that helps to keep our taxes low and assist with school taxes and doesn't put any children in the school. So I do like to point that out as part of those quick facts that help keep us where we are economically. Key priorities I'll discuss with everyone. So what basically we have on the township side, I separate them because the sewer runs differently as a business, so I'll keep the governmental funds in the township bucket. And I'll point out that for traffic safety improvements, which is a key priority for council, in 2025, we're spending over $3 million, largely due in part to the Smith Bridge Road Corridor project with the roundabout that's scheduled to be completed next year. I will also point out that that is largely grant funded. The school district and the township are applicants on that, and we are contributing the planning costs up front. Roads and stormwater management, anyone who's been following us in the ARPA work that council has been committed to and spending monies on, large portion of that towards stormwater management, which is extremely important for municipalities in today's day. We're investing about $1 million between roadway paving, inlet replacement, and stormwater management projects. Additionally, for parks, trails, and recreation, another key priority, council's committed to over $1 million for recreational improvements, funded by grants, largely funded by grants and capital investments that council has committed, including as part of those projects, we have a new neighborhood park that's happening on Beaver Valley Road. We have continuing design of the Octorara Trail, which is slated for construction and completion in 2026, which we're really excited about. On the sewer side, we have new sewer infrastructure that we're doing a lot of planning for and expansion, particularly in the Cambridge Downs neighborhood, Clayton Park area, and the Conchester service area. We're also looking at for the planning for Waterwheel, Mill Race neighborhoods, and the Governor Markham service area. Property and equipment upgrades. We've been upgrading our pump stations and doing renovations, which is all a part of the sustainability of our plant operations and making sure that all of those are modernized and running efficiently. Which I note the other two, modernizing and sustainability, which we're working on creating better processes. We have a huge project that we're working on to upgrade our UV system, which is an essential component to what comes out our outfall and meeting the DEP standards and then some. With that, I'll turn it over to Bill to talk about the governmental funds.
Thank you, Amanda. So for the governmental funds, that encompasses all the township-related funds, which is the general fund, special revenue, capital, and then the debt service funds. The current proposed budget for 2025 has $13,482,083 in proposed expenses. The two that I kind of want to point out is general fund and capital fund, as that makes up about, I believe, 76 or 78% of the total budget expenses on the township side. The general fund proposed budget is $4,321,000. That is a little more than a 3% increase than 2024's budget. That increase, as we get into a little bit, you'll see is a lot related to insurance premiums, healthcare benefits, employee costs, as well as general repairs and maintenance that have kind of come about over the last couple of years that Public Works has been doing that we really need to ramp up a little bit regarding buildings and a couple properties. The 3% is about the average that the budget increase has been year over year for the last 3 years. It's also currently in line with what the CPI has been for those same years. CPI has been about 3%. Obviously, there's been a little upticks in a few of those years due to coming out of COVID. But for the most part, over the last 5 years, it's been about 3%. So we do try to keep in line with that and reduce costs as best as we can where we can. But unfortunately, as things are increasing throughout the world, our costs also increase as related to it. And then with the Capital Projects Fund, the current budget for 2025 is $5,741,000. That is a little less than a 40% increase, and the main reason for that is our expectation that all of the Smithbridge Road roundabout will be constructed and completed in 2025. That is a little over, I think, a 3.3 million project, so that obviously makes up a large chunk of that $5.7 million. That is about 98% funded through various grants, as well as a match from the school district. There's a little bit left on the construction side that is probably going to come out of the capital reserve fund, about $200,000, I believe. But that is the bulk of that. And then as we get a little into it with the 5-year plan, obviously there's also other items in there included for Bush Hill Farms, the Octorara Trail, and a few other projects that are noted in the 5-year capital plan for next year. And then to break down this chart, this goes along with what I was speaking with the general fund. So this is the trends for the last 5 years for general fund operating revenues, expenditures, as well as fund balance. It's a little hard to tell up there, but in the packet. So for revenues since 2022, I use 2022 kind of as the benchmark because obviously 2020 and 2021 are very much outliers when it comes to revenue and expenses due to the pandemic. But since 2022, including 24's annualized expectations and 25 budgets, revenues have decreased over that time period 7%, while expenses have increased 9%. The reason for the expenditure increases is, as I previously noted, it's pretty much in line with CPI and kind of average inflation over that time period. There's not really much out of the ordinary that has caused those expenses to increase. They are in line with what I would expect during that time frame. The revenues is from coming out of COVID with the reduction, as Amanda said, kind of in the realty transfer taxes, a little bit in codes and permits as that was slowed, and has picked up in the last few years. But on the whole, over that time frame, it has been a 7% decrease. And then as you can see, that bottom trend line is the fund balance, which fund balance is, the best way to put it would be the savings account of the township. That is the monies that are in reserves that have carried over from year to year. Obviously, as expenditures increase and revenues are decreasing, that trend line is going downwards, where we're utilizing a portion of fund balance each year to make up that difference between the revenues and the expenses. And this chart shows the summary of the general fund budget for revenues. So as you can see, most of our revenues come from license permits and fees, which is our code department and property safety. These expenses are about $1.4 million within this year's budget, and essentially go to cover all code and property safety related expenses. So our inspectors, their wages, their benefits, the staff in here, taking in all the permit applications, the third-party inspectors that we have, all of those permit fees go to cover those costs. And then I believe as well, the franchise fees are also included in that number. I could be wrong, but just to put that out there. And then Act 511 taxes is the second biggest bucket. That's what Amanda and I have been speaking of the last few times. This is realty transfer, LST, and amusement tax. That accounts for $1.3 million of the current budget. Real estate taxes are 16%, about $650,000. Intergovernmental revenues, for the most part, are pass-through revenues. It's the MMO, the volunteer fire relief money. That also then includes any state operating grants, as well as any shared revenues or any shared expenditures that we get reimbursement for from other municipalities. For example, the traffic signals that we share with Chad's Ford. And then the remaining bucket of the all other revenue is mainly interest and any refunds and reimbursements we get, and that's about $300,000 of the current budget. And then here just shows the trend lines of current revenue. I just point these out again. As you can see, kind of the fluctuation in the Act 511, where between 21 and 22, there was a high tick up in revenues due to commercial and apartment sales that we receive transfer taxes for. But over the past 2 years, those sales have dipped and pretty much leveled off to where we see probably about 90% of what's coming in is related to residential sales. There are not a lot of commercial sales, and there has not been any of those multi-use residential properties that have sold this year to date. As I previously noted, historically, these three top items, the licenses and permits, Act 511 taxes, and real estate taxes, make up about 70% of township revenues. For the 2025 budget, they make up 68%. So we are pretty much in line with kind of historical. This one's a little hard to see up top. Yeah.
TVs are better.
Well, I won't go that far. We'll have that conversation another time. But essentially, this is the trends of the general fund expenditures. And just to highlight what this chart reflects, so it'll show that admin-related expenditures since 2022 have decreased 6%. Public safety expenditures have increased 15%. Public works, 6%. Insurance, 22%. And then employee-related benefits, which is taxes, healthcare, and pension, has also increased 16%. As you can tell, or as you can see, over the last, for the 2022-2023 actual numbers, as well as anticipated in the budget for 25, there's not a large fluctuation in these departments. We have done a very good job of keeping expenditures kind of in line with expectations, as well as year over year. There's really no department that has seen, well, I should say that, other than Park and Rec, due to us actually expanding and having a Park and Rec department really starting in 2023, no other department has really seen any high tick up in expenditures. Everything has basically been the same over the last 3 years, and that's our expectation going forward. And then to jump over to the sewer operating budget, the bulk of revenues in the sewer fund, which operates as a business type entity, comes from sewer rental fees. These are the fees that residents as well as commercial properties pay for their sewer bills. That makes up about 74% of revenues, and that number has been about the same for probably the last 4 or 5 years. It fluctuates a little bit, but it's right around 75% for the total revenues. The remainder of the revenues is made up between tapping fees, which is any new connections to the existing infrastructure that the township has put in place, and sewer capacity purchase is the other bulk, which is mainly new infrastructure from commercial properties. The best example would be the Pulte development or the Encompass Health facility that's going in. They would pay capacity purchases where they are having a sewer system installed that will then be dedicated to the township, but they pay upfront capacity purchases because they will be then utilizing our resources from the plant. And then similar to the other chart for general fund, sewer administration expenses have increased over the last 3 years 29%, where sewer collection has increased 30%, and then employee benefits and insurance have been in line with those items as well, where we've seen increases in these. A lot of this is due to the expansion of the sewer infrastructure, which has now required the plant to operate both sides A and B simultaneously, which they started last year. So this is the first full year that has happened. So then budgeting going forward, we have a better idea of those, increased costs. But that is the main reason for kind of those jumps, is as the flow has increased from all the new infrastructure, there's been a necessity to hire new staff members to cover, the operations of the plant, as well as the actual cost of the plant. The two major increases relate to chemicals and utilities, if you get into kind of the nitty-gritty of the budget and see what where the collection expenditures have increased the most. And then just a quick breakdown on this one. This includes both the sewer operating as well as the sewer capital funds. Include those two together because, like I said, it operates as a business kind of entity or activity. So at the end of the day, both those things kind of get put on top of one another, where the rental fees are intended to cover the operations, but also as a forward-looking item, are supposed to also cover any future expansion. So as you can see, the revenues have fluctuated a little bit, but that's mainly due to tapping fees and capacity purchases in years where there was a high tick in commercial properties. As I mentioned before, type properties like Encompass or Pulte, those projects would show an increase in those years. I point this out just because the plan for 2025 is to have a rate study for the sewer department in order to determine going forward if any changes in the sewer rates need to be made to account for what I just noted of the operating costs, future capital expansion, as well as current and any future debt service. I believe the last time we did a rate study was like 2016, 17.
Yeah, it's several years.
So it's been quite some time. So this is, again, just a study that our sewer department engineers do to determine if the fees are lacking in kind of keeping up with the flow, the plant operations, and everything that kind of goes into operating that sewer plant. And then I think last two quick ones for me. So this is a quick summary of the major township capital projects, and how they're funded. So in the current 5-year plan, there's $1.5 million budgeted for trail and park improvements, which includes Octorara Trail, Beaver Valley Park, as well as the Bush Hill Farm Master Plan implementation. This will be the first year of coming out of that study where we have started to implement some of the items that are noted in there. There's a little less than $3.5 million in traffic safety improvements, which is all of the Smith Bridge Road corridor improvements. There's a little less than $500,000 in stormwater, which, as you can see on the chart, those stormwater projects are funded through ARPA. They are both projects that council has already approved to be funded through ARPA funding. They are just included in the 2025 budget, kind of due to the scope and timing, of when those projects will be kind of put out to bid. As well as for the municipal complex, Public Works has been working on that throughout this year, and some of that work will be finished next year. And then the road paving is just our normal highway aid program. And then for sewer capital, there's really only 2 items that have always been kind of in place, and that's new infrastructure. So in the capital plan for next year is the planning and design of the Cambridge Down, Conchester, Waterwheel, Millrace, and Governor Markham service areas. They are 2 different projects where Cambridge Down and Conchester is one service area, and then the Waterwheel, Millrace, and Governor Markham is a second service area. So we're starting the planning on and hopefully construction soon on those projects. And then the remaining $2.6 million is the items noted there for the main plant UV system, the main plant airhead replacement, various pump station upgrades. So council knows, I think the average age of our pump stations is about 18 years. We currently, this year, are working on upgrading the equipment at 2 pump stations, and then we plan on doing 2 more next year. So we're starting kind of on that program of making sure that all those pump stations are up and running with the proper equipment and the newest equipment, so that we don't have any issues, and hopefully also reducing the maintenance that the staff is already doing on those items. And I just want to note, sorry, real quick, that the post-aeration tank covers, that is partially funded through a LSA grant that we just received with the state. I believe that's about a $420,000 estimated project, and we received $300,000 in funding for that project.
Okay, and then sort of this portion, we need to have, we're talking about discussion points. So as Bill laid out, the financial picture, where our budget's going. As was pointed out in the November 1st release of the proposed budget, a big discussion point this year for council is the fire company's request of doubling basically the amount of monies that we are giving per year through millage. So on this slide, I'll point out the current millage, which is 0.0697. brings in about $220,811. The new millage with the increase that they're requesting would be .1683. That brings in approximately $527,530. And if you look at the asterisks on the slide, you'll note that that number is based on 98% collection rate, which is how we handle that for all of our collection and revenue coming in with taxes. Additionally, I will point out that our fire services are supplemented with local services tax revenue of $140,000 approximately per year. This increase in millage that council can discuss would be an average cost to the resident of an additional $42 per year in their tax bill as it relates to fire services. The actual request, which was given to us as part of a presentation that the fire company gave at public meetings, is that they're looking for $656,950 from Concord Township to be contributed annually over several years that council can discuss moving forward. So with that, Dominic, I will turn that back to you all to discuss amongst yourselves of the request.
I think getting, it appears that our tax bill has 4 line items, if I'm not mistaken. One is the general fund, which I think Bill explained where the money comes in and where the money goes to. I think one of the line items is to fund the open space referendum that's probably been out there 25 years now, at least.
06, I think, yes.
And then one is to pay for the residents and businesses that have the availability of fire hydrants.
Correct.
There's a fire hydrant fee.
Correct.
And the last component is the fire company.
And library.
And library.
There's also the library, which is a dedicated millage, but then there's also, the last one is the fire company, and I think for those of us who have been here a number of years, and even some of the people who have only been here a few years, Concorville Fire Company is probably one of the best institutions in Delaware County, if not all southeastern Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, it is no longer a volunteer fire company, it's a paid fire department. And with that, there are costs. And I've been on the board many years, and we would give them extra money for this and that, but the volunteers were actually the ones going out there to fight the fire. I think the fire company made a presentation that, in my opinion, warranted their getting more money in order to pay to put the fires out and provide the ambulance services to the people of Concord Township. They also service other municipalities, and I would encourage those municipalities to treat it the same way. And although none of us likes to hear about a tax increase, what is being proposed here would be a tax increase with the money going all to the fire company. Nothing else to fund the general fund, nothing else for the library, nothing else for anything else, other than to have them have the resources, be able to pay for the resources they need in order to put out fires and have an ambulance come if you call them. And I, for one, think that it's a worthwhile expenditure. I think for the average taxpayer in Concord Township, average assessment, it would probably be a total of about $40 extra a year, which is less than $1 a week, which isn't a lot of money. We have Lee Worsling here from the fire company if he wants to add anything, or if any of my other colleagues want to jump in first and add something regarding the budget. Maybe we'll defer to council first and hear from the fire company, if that's okay. Anybody have anything they want to add?
I definitely want to say that fire department is one of the best that we have here, and public safety and public rescue is priority to us. So any and every help we can give to our fire department is much needed and will be looked at.
Yeah, just a few words on the total budget. Great thanks to our township staff for putting this together. I know it didn't happen quickly. It's a couple-month process putting it together and talking to department heads, and we've had several meetings ourselves with the staff, and also the fire company came and presented their request to us, and that's all I have to say. I don't want to get into any specifics. I just wanted to thank our township staff for the work that they've done.
Okay. I think one thing that is evident, though, I think that we should be considering having Bill and Amanda look at other tax revenue from other sources to help fund the general fund. Right now, we are paying the fire company for what it costs for fire services. We're paying the library probably the highest contribution they get from any of the municipalities that are in the Rachel Cole Library.
Yes.
The bond referendum was set by referendum, so we have to pay that in the fire hydrants. But it seems like the variable is the general fund, the thing that keeps this building open, keeps the guys out there plowing the streets and cutting the grass, has the grease band show up at a concert or the fireworks, those kinds of things. So I think I would rely on our Amanda and Bill maybe to, in this next calendar year, come up with some ideas of maybe other ways of getting some additional revenues outside of the real estate tax bill that could help fund the general fund portion of the taxes.
So I have discussion points that'll follow that discussion. In terms of the fire company request, I need to know from council how you want to handle, as part of this hearing, me to address the millage. Are we, as part of final, coming into the council meeting on December 3rd? That because we have to re-advertise and include the taxation that is appropriate for residents to have time to review.
Okay. So do we need to make a motion to approve the increase in the millage to the fire company as has been explained?
I'll make a motion to move the millage for the fire company to the .1683.
Yes.
Second.
We got 2 seconds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Can I just make one adjustment to say that we just got the assessment back from the county, which may affect slightly the number, so it might be 0.1684, or, so I just want to point that out. Is it
So-
okay to say? Go ahead.
I will say this, that at setting it at .1683, factoring in 98% collection rate as noted there, plus the 140, would meet the fire company's ask. I would expect with what the millage is currently, probably about a 1% dip in the revenue across the board amongst all funds. So I can,
But as more properties come online, we should be getting more.
that's what I don't
Yeah,
know.
okay.
It's
So
still,
probably by the end of
essentially,
the year, it might be a
county's number
wash.
is based on what they have through October.
But
So
by the end
anything
of the year-
November and December assessment-wise could change that, but realistically, I'm anticipating about a 1% decrease in our total assessment.
Okay.
So that's why I said, I don't know, we can bump, the millage rate by 1%, or, kind of keep it as is and maybe supplement with a little LST budget-wise. I'm kind of laying out all the options so that you guys are aware
But you
of
really
that.
won't know that till the end of next year.
I really won't know that honestly until January about 10th.
Yeah, but
when
what
I
I'm
get the
getting-
actual books
What I'm
from.
getting at is, as new assessments come on during the course of the next year's calendar years, there will be interim taxes due.
Correct.
We don't know what that number is.
Correct.
So-
This number is based on all the information that we have available to us right now.
And we need to assign a value to that millage by December 3rd.
Exactly.
All right.
So we will do that and make sure, we'll have that information very quickly based on what was given to us at this point in time we got today.
So the motion needs to be modified to
Or
state,
do you want to change the collection rate?
I mean, yeah, I can also
Should-
change the collection rate of the budget to ensure that the fire company will get the $656,000 that they're asking for. You know what I mean? From a budget, from a bookkeeping budgetary standpoint, the way I budget for everything, because
don't get
every
100%.
year we collect 98% of real estate taxes. Obviously, some then get turned over to the county because there are delinquents.
so the motion should reference the dollar amount versus the millage amount.
That's what I was just going to say.
That would make more sense,
So
Colleen, yes, thank you.
656,000 what?
Well, I think if you look at his chart, it
I
should,
think The,
Well, you're
950.
giving him the 140, correct?
yes, the
Let's
revenue.
go back to the other chart, please.
Yep.
So the millage ought to be increased in order to meet that number of $527,530.
Yes.
Correct.
Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry to make that a little complicated.
No problem.
I tried to make it easy.
Don't say anything else, all right?
Okay, so then here's the final sort of discussion points here before we get into public comment, if there's any, is obviously today, we got this information, and it looks like from what we're reviewing, that it is about a 1% decrease for 2025. We are narrowing that down, looking at that, and we'll make the best decisions possible. Fund balance utilization. As we pointed out, and as is in the presentation to the public, this budget includes using fund balance to balance the budget. We are required to have a balanced budget as part of us being a home-ruled municipality and second-class township. So we want to point that out because it's about $200,000 technically short between revenue and expenditures. So we are using fund balance from the previous year, that is noted in the chart, in the budget sheet, to balance that if all expenditures are met and revenues realized. So I'll add to that future capital projects funding. Dominic, as you mentioned, us trying to figure out what we are going to be doing because we don't have dedicated revenue into our township capital fund. What we do is budget in our general fund to take that revenue and use it for capital projects. So that is extremely important for us to be figuring out how we are doing that because right now we are not able to budget funds for the capital project fund to come from the general fund due to the $200,000 we're using of fund balance. Additional discussion points is, infrastructure maintenance. So these are things as council has done an excellent job of securing open space, and we have these facilities that are first rate, like pickleball and other things, and we have these amazing parks that we're trying to give love to and get as much grant funding as possible. They do cost money to maintain, and over time, they do, and things have to get modernized and fixed, and we try to do as much as we can with grants, but it's something that falls in line with what we need to be thinking about as we have future capital expenses that we are going to have to cover and figure out revenue-wise. So I do want to point that out. I don't know if council wants to opine on anything other than what Dominic, you said previously. So I'll give you a second to let me know what you want to, if you want to discuss anything further there.
Bill, what is our total assessment right now?
From the county for 2025?
Yeah.
It's $3,133,985,000.
Okay. All right, any questions from council, or should we open it up to the public, or Larry, you got anything, are you good? Anita, Dana, all good? Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? Dave?
David Montville, Forshaw Circle. Montville. M-O-N-T-V-I-L-L-E. For Shaw Circle, Garnet Valley. Could you go back to the millage chart, please?
I don't have a millage chart up.
With the increase that you were, that one. The 220,000 from this year, in your budget, it shows only 180. Where, is that 40,000? Are we going to get reduced at 40,000 again?
No.
Because you had 140 from general and 180 from millage.
No, it's 216. The 180 is fire hydrant tax. That top line is fire hydrant. The one that says
Oh,
fire
213
services.
below it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
the second line item on that table, the one that says
Sorry,
fires, no problem, is fire
And
services.
by the way,
That's-
thank you very much for supporting the fire company.
Yep.
Thank you for being there. Hopefully, we never need you, but you're there when we are. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this hearing. Second,
Second.
all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you for coming out.